thing I wanted to bring up is Raymond alerted me to something. I did a podcast a few nights ago with Logan Murdoch, and I mentioned during the podcast that last season, in which we had the worst record in the league, was more enjoyable from a coaching standpoint than the previous season when we lost in the finals. And the context was basically that after the 5-year run that we were on, that 5th year was just an absolute bear. It was the stress level, 2 season-ending injuries during the finals. DeMarcus also had a serious injury that took him out of the playoffs for 6 weeks. We had all kinds of stress. The whole point of the conversation was the stress of the 5-year run compared to coaching a team of young guys that doesn't win many games, but is eager to learn. And I made the comment sort of offhanded that last year was more enjoyable than that previous season. And that was it. That was my comment. Drew Schiller decided to tweet today that Steve Kerr said he enjoyed last season more than Kevin Durant's last year with the Warriors. Okay. So I want to make this extremely clear. If you want to actually get the story accurate, I encourage you to listen to the podcast before we sort of take this story into offshoots and use that as my quote.
All right. So just like he went ahead and said just now, Steve Kerr went on some podcast and was talking to some guy, and made a comment that he's, from a coaching standpoint, he's having a better time coaching these team as a losing record as opposed to the stress pressure filled scenario of the Warriors in 2000, and what was that, the 19 Warriors or something like that, right? When they lost to the Raptors, right? So my thing is this: it's like, all right, look, context is a good thing. It's a very important thing in communication and language, right? Context. I mean, it's reading between the lines, it's understanding situational speech, things of that nature. We all get that, right? But the thing is, you have to be understanding of the context of the moment. Steve Kerr. I'm talking to Steve Kerr. When you say to a person that, as a coach, I'm having a more enjoyable time coaching these kids or these young men who've not experienced very much success in the league. He even had a Freudian slip where he said we're not winning anything, or not winning very much, or not winning games or whatever else from the comment after that. But when you say things like that and then say in comparison to the team that went to the finals, because it was a stress-laden season, there was just a lot going on. And if you guys listen to the interview, it says in the interview, there's things that are going on behind the scenes. If you knew, you knew. If you didn't, you didn't. You guys can check out a book called Victory Machine, from Ethan Strauss. Don't really like the book, but I'm giving it a plug anyway. You guys can read it and make up your own mind. So Ethan Strauss is pretty much like a Warrior-related writer or whatever, and he documenting that last season from KD's with the Warriors. And he paints KD to look like some sort of spoiled brat, where, in my personal estimation, now he knows way more than I do. He's been exposed to way more than me. I'm just using my brain. It didn't really come off that the Warriors appreciated him very much. It seemed to me that the Warriors took him for granted and mistreated him. From Draymond calling him what he called him, to Bob Myers drunk at the victory parade saying KD hopped on Steph's bandwagon. Them trying to hide the fact that KD had hurt his Achilles before, and they're trying to make it seem like a high calf sprain and all this other stuff, and then trying to force him to get back to win. Like, all that stuff that they did, like, it leads me to believe that Kevin was telling the truth. And then for stuff like this too, where Steve Kerr says little stuff like this. And the funny thing is, he doesn't understand what he said, or he does understand what he said, but he's just trying to cover his tracks. Basically, what he said was, "Look, I have a more enjoyable time coaching these kids as opposed to coaching, that Warriors team with that 19 Warriors team who just happened to have Kevin Durant on it in his last year." And he was saying because of the stress, because of the amount of pressure. Well, the reason why there was stress and pressure had a lot to do with KD leaving or staying. Like, you guys keeping that dynasty going or the dynasty running out. Like, that's where a lot of that pressure came from. And KD getting into it with Draymond, and KD getting into it with Steve Kerr, and Steve Kerr trying to call out KD in the media. And that's when he did the "you know who I am" and stuff like that, because they felt like Steve Kerr hopped on KD about KD playing too much ISO ball, which KD sometimes can do. And he was just like, we run a team game here. And KD was like, okay, cool. Well, I'll just be a part of the team game. So he was part of the team game. And then that's when they lost to the Rockets. And then Steve Kerr was just like, well, KD needs to be more aggressive. He was like, look, bro, you told me to be a part of the team. That's what I'm doing. You want me to read your mind or read the? He's just like, well, I want him to read the situation and know when he needs to take over. I'm like, look, man, I ain't here to be no mind reader or whatever else. Like, you're the coach. You tell me what you need me to do, and I'll go do it. Like, you know what I'm saying? To me, that rubbed salt in the wound. That put a bad taste in my mouth about Steve Kerr and that whole Golden State setup. And I mess with Clay, I mess with Steph. I don't really mess with Draymond like that. But for the most part, I pretty much mess with that team. I just don't appreciate how KD was treated, because I feel like they took him for granted. And then when he got to the biggest stage, he showed out. He made him look away. Like, you had to go get me to deal with LeBron. You couldn't deal with him on your own. Now, y'all can talk about, well, you just lost 3-1 to this team all you want. The fact of the matter is they were recruiting me before that was even a thought that we could have played them in the playoffs. You know what I'm saying? If I'm KD, that's what I'm saying. Like, that's irrelevant. I just feel like it's just a mess, man. I feel like Kerr is still resentful as far as the situation goes. I feel like KD still is, and you see how KD tweeted back. He was just like, "This is hilarious," because KD is understanding, like, bro, this Golden State thing just won't stop. It's like Tom Brady and the Patriots. It's like, you didn't treat me the way I wanted to be treated, and now I'm dipping. You still trying to, like, throw salt or whatever you're trying to do. I don't understand what it is that you're trying to do. KD is out here. He recreated Golden State in Brooklyn. And if he plays his cards right, could win a title with them in his first year. If I'm Kevin Durant, I'm thinking about that. We got bigger fish to fry than Steve Kerr and whatever else. But what's hilarious is Steve Kerr trying to use the word context so much. Bruh, you said that. You literally said, hey, I enjoy coaching this team that may not win as many games, as opposed to, from a coaching standpoint, as opposed to that 2018-2019 team, even though it was a better team, went to the championship because of the stress. There was so much to deal with during that season. It just got hard for me to deal with. And I just think that reporter read between the lines saying, look, if you're saying that the stress and the pressure of that 18-19 season was too much, well, who did that stress and pressure revolve around? It revolved around KD. So kind of inadvertently, you're saying, I'd rather be coaching this, or I'm having more fun coaching these group of kids who are not winning, as opposed to KD's last year. Because that's exactly, I mean, he wasn't wrong in saying that. He was just like, well, he made me saying, like, okay, well, I didn't like coaching KD's last year. Bro, that's inadvertently what you just said. That 2018-19 was KD's last year. You said that it wasn't, you didn't look forward to going to work in 2018 and 19. So you didn't look forward to going to working for the team when it had KD on as first last year. Like, I just don't understand the whole little beef, and I just really think it's getting old. And I feel like KD has moved on to a point, but he's still listening. And I just feel like all this is unnecessary from them. And the Warriors need to be worrying about how they're gonna, get in the playoffs or try to do something, as opposed to, Steve Kerr worrying about what KD doing or speaking on being on some podcast and talking about stuff that can get him in trouble. He needs to just focus on the Warriors, bro. Just focus on the Warriors, focus on your team, and then that should be it. Like, this is getting crazy.